All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive back in.
Always up for a good deep dive.
Today, we're cracking open the book of Genesis again, but we're going a little off the beaten path, chapters 10 through 12.
Oh, intriguing. We're getting into Table of Nations territory, aren't we?
You got it. Genesis chapter 10 often gets overlooked, but trust me, this is way more exciting than your average genealogy.
Right. It's not just a list of so-and-so beget so-and-so. It's like the who's who of the ancient world after the flood.
Exactly. You've got Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Ring a bell.
Oh, definitely. Familiar names, but this chapter explodes outwards from them.
It's like watching the world get its second act, each descendant branching out, forming their own people groups.
And it's not random. What's fascinating is how this chapter tries to connect the dots, make sense of the world as the ancient Israelites knew it.
So it's their way of explaining, like, here's where everyone came from, even centuries after the fact.
Exactly. It's about understanding their present by grounding it in a shared past, even if that past was, a bit hazy.
Right, like, we may be different now, but we all go back to this one family, a common ancestor kind of thing.
Absolutely. And you see how geography plays a huge role, too. It's not just names. It's the people of the East, the families of the Canaanites spread abroad.
So it's like where they lived wasn't just incidental, it's part of their whole identity.
Precisely. And that connection between land and peoplehood, it had huge implications. It makes you think, how did that shape their interactions, their understanding of themselves and others? Did it create a stronger sense of belonging within those boundaries? Or maybe even a sense of otherness for those outside of them?
Now, those are some interesting questions. And speaking of interesting figures, we've got to talk about Nimrod, mighty hunter himself. He pops up in verse 9, almost like a legend, even in this early stage.
Right. Nimrod, he's a fascinating character. He represents this rise of powerful kingdoms. He's building cities, including Babel, which we know is going to be a big deal.
Foreshadowing.
Totally. And even the way he's described, a mighty one on the earth, some scholars see that as already hinting at a challenge to divine authority.
Ooh, even this early on.
Subtle, but it's there, planting the seeds of ambition that are going to blossom in the next chapter with, you guessed it, the Tower of Babel.
All right, so Genesis chapter 11. Cue the dramatic music. It's Tower of Babel time.
The Tower of Babel, right. It's one of those stories that everyone's heard, but
there's always more to uncover.
Absolutely. It's so layered.
So set the scene for us. We've got humanity all speaking the same language. And they decide, hey, let's build a city with a tower that reaches the heavens.
What could go wrong?
Right. Talk about ambition. It's like the ultimate skyscraper. What's interesting, though, is that on the surface, it almost seems like a noble goal, Unity, togetherness, building something amazing.
Right. This striving for something great, you can almost get swept up in the grandeur of it. But you hit the nail on the head. Ambition is the key word here.
Because it's not just about building a tower, is it?
No, it's deeper than that. The text says they wanted to make a name for themselves. It's about challenging the established order, trying to reach a level that,
that's reserved for someone else.
Exactly. It's like saying, we can do this ourselves, we don't need
divine intervention.
Precisely. And that's where this story transcends its time and place, It taps into this very human anxiety about ambition, about what happens when we try to become like God.
Especially, this was written centuries after the supposed events, right? So it makes you wonder what the storytellers were trying to say about power, about overreaching.
Oh, absolutely. It's like they'd seen empires rise and fall, and they're wrestling with these big questions. What are the limits of human ambition? What are the consequences of reaching too high?
And it's funny, isn't it, how a story this ancient can still feel so relevant? Like that fear of overreaching, we haven't really shaken that off, have we?
It's timeless. And the story goes there, doesn't it? It shows us what happens. God intervenes, confuses their languages, scatters them across the earth. It's this really poignant picture of how quickly unity can unravel when ambition, when it outpaces wisdom.
It's a powerful image. And yet, even with the scattering, the story isn't over, right? In fact, Genesis zooms right back in this time on Shem and his descendants.
And that's crucial. It's like amidst the chaos and division of Babel, there's still this plan in motion. Remember, Shem is the ancestor of Abraham.
Setting the stage for the whole covenant.
Exactly. So we have this thread of continuity running through. Even in dispersal, there's this chosen line, this destiny being woven into the narrative.
Which brings us to the heart of it all, the story of Abram. So Genesis 12, enter Abram. Soon to be Abraham, but not quite yet.
The man, the myth, patriarch.
Talk about a life-changing moment. God basically tells him, pack your bags, Abram, leave everything you know and go to this land I'll show you.
It's a huge turning point, not just for Abram, but for like the entire story of Israel, right? This is where the covenant really starts to take shape.
And what a covenant. I mean, God's promising land, descendants beyond counting, blessings for all nations. It's a lot to take in.
Especially considering what Abram's being asked to leave behind. Home, family, everything familiar, all on the basis of what? A promise.
That's some serious faith, right? To just pick up and go, not knowing where you're going to end up, just trusting.
It makes you think, what did Abram see in that promise? What made it worth that kind of risk? It's a question that still resonates, don't you think?
Totally. It speaks to something like deeply human, you know?
Yeah.
That capacity for belief, for trusting in something beyond what you can see.
Exactly. And that's so central to Genesis, this idea that even when things seem chaotic, even when we can't grasp the whole picture, there's a plan unfolding.
We've journeyed from a world rebuilding to a tower reaching too high, and now to this guy, Abram, stepping out in faith. No map, no GPS, just a promise.
It's amazing what a deep dive into these ancient chapters can do. You start to see these patterns, these echoes of human experience that, honestly, they still resonate today.
That's what I love about these deep dives. It's like, yeah, these stories are old, but they still have something to teach us about faith, ambition, our place in the world.
Absolutely. And for me, one of the biggest takeaways is that even small acts of faith, of courage, they can have ripple effects we might never fully grasp.
So, to everyone listening, what will your ripple be? What ancient echoes do you hear in your own life? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.